This episode is proudly supported by Westholme Australian Wagyu. Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and the Northern Territory, Australia, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. They steward 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by the natural ecosystem where cattle graze and forage on native grasses for the first few years of their lives. The result is high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia. Westholme believe that when nature leads, flavour follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
I love when it's busy. You know, it's like running a symphony, I feel. You've got the docket rail full of dockets, and because of how our venue is situated, I can't see the whole restaurant, but I can see the restaurant through the dockets, and that does really excite me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. History can make such a huge impression on a dining experience, whether it's a chef's culinary trail, an approach to cookery that leans into the past, or the building itself. How do you honour the past and cook in the present with an offering in a small regional town in one of the oldest buildings in the country? Kurt Neumann is the chef and co-owner of Grazing in Gundaroo, New South Wales. Kurt, how are you?
Huck, I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here.
It's great to get you on the show. You've got a great business in regional New South Wales and a stunning old building. How are things at the moment?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Firstly, we do have a beautiful old building. She'll be celebrating 160 years next year, actually. But in general terms, look, we're travelling really well. Being in a rural setting that we are, offer different challenges but also unique experiences, as you mentioned in your headline there. But I'm happy to report that we're doing well.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there at Grazing.
So we've been there for just over 13 years now. And, you know, as most things, you evolve and adapt over that time. But I guess our current approach is that I don't often like the term modern Australian cuisine. So I like to sort of refer to us as refined country dining, relaxed dining, great produce, fresh, relaxed dining experience for our customers and guests, and a lot of the staff have been with us for such a long time as well, so they're well over, you know, our processes and how we like to present ourselves.
You mentioned that the building celebrates 160 years next year. Tell us a little bit about the history of the building and the challenges that you have in sort of working within it.
Yeah, sure. So a very brief history of the building. It's got 160 years of tales to tell, but it was opened in 1865 by a local resident by the name of William Affleck, and he ran it as a pub through there were other hands involved, but until about 1920, when in fact Resch's Brewery purchased the license and relocated the license to a new pub in Queanbeyan. Basically, then from about 1928 through to about 1968, it was a private residence. Then everyone would know from the Canberra region of Murray's Buses, and the owner, Ron Murray, he in fact purchased the building, the Royal Hotel, and made it a bit of a tourist spot. He'd bring out busloads of people, and I can tell you pretty much every week we have some customers, older dining clientele, come in and tell us, oh, we used to come out here on the Murray's Buffers and I'd pick up a banjo player on the way, and they'd serve kangaroo-tailed soup in a damper and all these stories. So the walls could certainly, if they could talk, there'd be a few stories to tell. and then again, I'm not sure how long Ron Murray had it for, but in 2005, uh, the original owners of Grazing, they basically re-established it as Grazing itself. And in fact, last year we did 20 years of Grazing Restaurant.
You've been there, as you mentioned, for quite some time. How much has things changed since you've been there?
Well, the business in terms of the area itself has changed. I guess it's diversifying. There's a lot more residential spaces or dwellings being built out in the region. So that, I guess, border of Canberra is getting closer and closer. In terms of what we do, we have a large function room that we do host a heap of weddings every year, and not just weddings, but other parties. But really, through winter, you get your regular dining clientele that want to come in and sit by the fireplace, and that is the main heating source in winter in the building. That these 1.5 foot thick mud brick walls. So when we come in on a Thursday morning, it's like an ice brick, and we get all the fires going. And after a day or two of those going, the building's nice and warm, and that radiant heat. It's just something completely different. You don't get that in many spots around the area. We also have large gardens, which we used to grow a lot of vegetables and herbs and these types of things. But after COVID or through COVID, there was not much point in really doing that. So we changed them to actually a cut flower garden, where my wife has really taken a hand into growing dahlias and zinnias and these types of things, which is beautiful through spring and summer. And I also I took over a couple of beehives, so we've got our own beehives out there as well, which just sort of, it helps, the pollination of the flowers, and there are fruit trees and old fruit trees on the property that obviously benefit from that.
With the building being so old, what sort of challenges do you face operationally to run a restaurant there?
Oh, well, it's not just given that it's so old, it's also being in a rural setting. We run off water tanks and gas bottles and these types of things. So like for instance, if we have a dry period, we're buying in water, so we've always got to make sure that we've got water in the water tanks, or and has happened in the past, we might be holding large events and weddings or whatever, and a storm comes across, as it does in our regions in spring and summer, knocks the power out. Well, you don't have running water, so what do you got to do? Try and find a generator and get the pumps running, and the exhausts go out, the lights go out. So, but the show rolls on. You keep cooking, you make sure the guests are happy, and it adds. But then they do see the funny side of it. But it does add challenges like that. It's challenges you don't get in town.
I want to explore what you're doing there at Grazing in a little while, but take us back to when you were young. Where did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play for you?
Yeah, so I grew up on a rural property just outside of Canberra, about 40 minutes out of Canberra in Carwoola. My father's from a German background, and so my sister and I, we were exposed to European cooking right from the beginning, and we were always challenged to try different things and try new things. Food was always a big part of our lives growing up, particularly my German grandmother, my Oma. She was a great cook, but also a fantastic baker. So I would always, remember she'd always bake these amazing tarts and cakes and everything. That we'd always have coffee and cake in the afternoon. And so sort of the love of food, I guess, came there. Not that I necessarily wanted to become a chef, when I grew up or left school. I really sort of fell into it. And, I was working in hospitality once I finished school, and I just really enjoyed the camaraderie and the nightlife and, all those other things that went along with it, and was offered an apprenticeship shortly after leaving school, and I haven't looked back.
We'll take a look at your career early on shortly, but when you were young, is there any sort of feasts or dishes that you remember that you can take us through and share?
Yeah, sure. We would tend to have Christmas was always celebrated on Christmas Eve for us, the German Christmas, and they were always a big deal. The family would always come around and we'd do and normally it would be at our place where we lived, and Mum would put on a big meal. But we'd also have parties. Because we lived on a property, we had plenty of space. We'd put pig on a spit, or a goat or a lamb on the spit. And just that was just what we would used to do. But I do remember one year actually, my father, he had this romantic idea. Oh, why don't we do goose for Christmas? So we bought these geese and we just let them run through the paddock. Anyway, we went to slaughter these geese and cook them, and they were so tough. And our Christmas that year, I think, was basically just vegetables. We didn't really know what we were doing at the time, but next year we tried it the following year, and we penned these geese up and prepared them correctly, and Dad got his Christmas goose.
Tell us about the early years in your career. Where did you do your apprenticeship, and do you have any stories from it?
So I really started my apprenticeship at a venue no longer around, but it was in Kingston in the ACT. It was called First Floor. I spent a year, probably just under a year there in my first year of apprenticeship, but where I really took a lot of my training from was a small place called the Green Herring, which was in Nichols. And it was just a chef and his ex-partner, and they ran this a building very similar to Grazing, a lot smaller, but it was an old schoolhouse originally. And I was exposed to so much great food. I mean, Graham was just such a great chef, one of the true old school chefs. And after that, sort of finishing up there in about 2002, I went to Ottoman, which was in Barton. It had just moved to Barton, it just opened. And really, being fine dining Turkish, I was there for a good couple of years, 2-3 years. And that was the time when, some really good friendships were forged. Every now and again, you get an occasion where you work in a venue and everyone just clicks. And Ottoman was that place for me. I mean, we just made so many great friends. And in fact, that's where I met my wife when we were working together there. And, however many years later, nearly 17, 20 years later, here we are. Then, like most Aussie chefs, you take a sabbatical overseas. I didn't do the traditional thing of going to London. I went to Canada instead and ended up in Victoria on Vancouver Island. And it was just pure luck. I landed a great job at a new little 5-star boutique hotel that had opened up on the Malahat River, which was just north of Victoria. I think we had maybe 6 or 8 rooms, not too many rooms, but there was a gastro pub and a fine dining restaurant. And I ended up in the fine dining restaurant, and the menu we changed basically every second day. And the executive chef would just order in all this food, and we'd walk in to the cool room in the morning and go, yep, okay, what are we going to do? And interestingly, actually, that was one of the first times we would cook over a mesquite grill, so firewood, mesquite wood. And I can't even think of anywhere in Australia that was probably doing that at that time, and that was back in 2004. So that was quite an experience. So, and just being exposed to the different mushrooms and the different produce that they had there was just amazing. It was really, really good fun.
What did you take from your time in Canada?
I think the approach on fresh, sort of not paddock to plate, but harvest to restaurant philosophy was there. The food scene was, I guess, a couple of steps back from what I'd experienced in Australia, but their approach to food was a bit different.
I want to just go back to Ottoman for a moment. It's such an institution and legendary establishment of the ACT. You mentioned about, sometimes there's a group of people and everything just clicks. That happened for the consumers as well as the staff. What was it about that venue that made that happen?
I think if you could capture what that was, every small business owner would be implementing, that ingredient. Really, I think it was just a chemistry. It was just a chemistry that worked. As you said, it was an institution. We were busy. There was days we would be doing 500 covers, lunch and dinner. It was just huge. And we were a small team as well. We're a small team in the kitchen. Sharif, the head chef owner, he would work every day, every shift, which was probably a part of it as well. I don't know. I can't really answer that. It was just really the chemistry that came down to it, everyone that worked together.
Yeah, I think chemistry is a great answer. After your time in Canada, what was it like coming back to Australia?
Yeah, it was good. We'd planned to relocate to Brisbane. Tanya, my wife, her parents were living in Brisbane at that stage, and we had to come back to Canberra to see my family. And there was a time we'll if anyone's from Canberra, they'll know what I'm talking about. It was just the end of summer, and we were driving over the Kings Avenue Bridge. We thought, you know what, this city, it's just beautiful. Why do we want to leave? We've got all our connections here. I also had a young daughter at the time that was living in Canberra. It's like, yeah, there's no point for us to leave. So we really settled our roots back in Canberra and haven't looked back since.
What did you do when you got back to Canberra? Take us through that sort of, what you started at.
Yeah. So when we got back to Canberra, it didn't take us long to find work, really. At that stage, there was a venue called Art Espresso, and it was owned and run by Dean Summit. He was the first chef in Canberra to get 2 chefs hat by the Sydney Morning Herald when he was at Atlantic. And he had a sous chef role just become available. So he had contacted me knowing that I'd come back to Australia. So I lined up an interview and went straight in, basically. Was with Dean for a couple of years. Then I was offered, at this stage I was still 26 when I was offered this head chef role at a venue called Alto, and that was in the Telstra Tower, the revolving restaurant, and it had been taken over by a couple of people and refurbed, and I was part of the opening crew. So that was about in 2006, and that was a beast. That was huge. It was a lot for a young 26-year-old, but looking back on it, it did also give me experience. It probably toughened me up, really, to move forward and to eventually own my own business.
What was the dining scene like then compared to sort of what we see now?
Oh, I mean, Canberra, I felt was always nowhere near the Sydney and Melbourne scene. We're in the middle between these two great cities, and there was not much happening. We're really only supporting the local community and the region. That was back then. Now, definitely the Canberra dining scene stands on its own 2 feet. It's some of the places that are coming up, and particularly the new people that are opening venues, yeah, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find venues anywhere better in Australia. And a lot of the local the new venues are Canberra locals as well. You know, they come from here. They've got their roots here. I mean, I'm probably I'm part of the old scene really now, having cooked for over 20 years or been a chef for over 20 years and having establishment for 13, 14 years. But it is really nice to see the change.
Tell us about the beginnings of Grazing. How did it all come about for you?
So I was working at Courgette as Jane Mussion's head chef. This was back in 2009 when I took that role over. And some really good friends of ours, Tom and Crystal Moore. Tom had a restaurant in Gorman House in Ainslie called Sage. And he was running Grazing at that stage at the same time. Anyway, Crystal was from Canada, and they had always planned to relocate back to Victoria on Vancouver Island. And they needed someone to take over the runnings of the restaurant, take over the lease. And, having known them, it was one of those, I guess, right place, right time, lucky opportunities. And yeah, we were presented with Grazing and we decided, well, this is it. This is our chance. And we just really dove in.
What were some of the challenges, or do you have any funny stories of the beginnings of running your own business like that?
The challenges are ongoing, really. Being in a rural setting that we are, it's hard to get deliveries a lot of the time. So, we either use our home, which is not out in Gundaroo, or there's a supplier I have in Canberra that's happy to receive our stock and I can pick it up from them. So that was one of the challenges. You don't have, we've got a little corner store in Gundaroo, but you don't have a Woolies or a Coles or an IGA or something like this. So you've got to plan. You've got to make sure that you're not going to run out of something. You just can't duck down to the shop to pick it up. Staffing's always an issue. I mean, every business, I know from your previous podcast, a lot of small businesses in hospitality are screaming for staff. It's harder in the rural setting. It's hard to make people but encourage people to travel to you. We are fortunate that a lot of our staff, particularly our front of house staff, have either been with us for a long time. For instance, our manager, Lily, she's been with us from the beginning. So, but we employ a lot of young kids in the area. So, giving them experiences in hospitality and, something to do on the weekends and early in the week as well. But it's the full-timers in the kitchen that's the hardest.
You mentioned that the gardens changed after COVID and what you do with them, but has your approach with the restaurant and your cooking changed at all after all of that?
I don't know if the cooking or the approach changed, but what COVID did really highlight for us was the strong sense of community. We're in this little village, 30, 40 minutes from Canberra. We had to rely on our locals. So in the second lockdowns, we did open, we did some takeaway, and we were busy. But we would do Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights takeaways, and often it was just me and the manager, and sometimes I'd call in somebody else. But we were busy, and it would just blow me away that this restaurant in this small village, that we had all these locals supporting us, and that sort of, I don't know how to really put it into words, but that really sort of galvanised our position, how we felt about the community, and that we were very lucky.
Tell us about your cooking and your approach. It's very much for the community, but it's also for residents of Canberra for a bit of a day trip or even travellers as well. How do you get that balance right?
Maturity. I think when you're young, you just try and throw everything together. Now I approach my food, the menu, as if it's things I would like to eat, or things I think our customers would like to eat or experience, I should say. Um, and you also, and this is more the business side of it, you look at what you have available to you in terms of your personnel and your cooking equipment and your costing, and thinking, well, how can this be consistent as well? You can prepare it once, but is it going to be the same if you've got to prepare it 100 times in a short space of time? So I guess my approach has been really to keep it simple, simple flavors, cooked well, um, treat the produce with respect, and just one of the things I always tell our staff is we're building consistency. We want consistency, and I feel that we sort of reached that. But I also look at it. So I'm always trying to teach myself new things, and that was one of the areas why I got into cooking. Was I feel you can always be learning. My philosophy is if you've reached a point in hospitality, regardless if you're a chef or front of house or whatever your station is, if you've reached the point and said, I know it all, I can't learn anything more, well, you should get out, because it is boundless, and you're really only limited by your imagination and your creativity in what you can do. Of course, there's limitations in what might be acceptable to your dining clientele, but that's basically where I come at it from.
Is there a dish or two on the menu that you can take us through that sort of speaks of your cooking at the moment?
Yeah, there's a couple of dishes on the menu. One in particular that has been on for quite some time now, and it's one that I really can't take off, and that's our hand-rolled potato tortellini. The beauty of this dish is that it can also be vegan and not just vegetarian, but it's just a very simple, almost like a potato gnocchi dough, but no egg or anything like this. We bind it using lemon juice and olive oil and these types of things. And we make an almond ricotta filling for it. So almond meal and nutritional yeast and roast garlic and lemon juice and olive oil, and hand rolled, simple beurre noisette, some muscatels, fried crispy parsley. So when you've got that buttery flavour from the beurre noisette, obviously the soft texture of the pasta dough, the potato dough, but then you've got the crunch with some macadamia, with some almonds and the sweetness from the muscatels. So balancing the flavours and texture, I think is really important. And then we also, we get into a little bit more, not so much rustic, but something that lends itself very well to our area or to the venue is we're doing a house smoked pork jowl terrine, PX roast, Pedro Yemeno's roast pears, some date and whitloaf. So I just like to. I don't know. I just think that those sorts of things work in harmony. Keep it simple.
Your wine list very much sort of delves into the incredible wineries of the region. How do you approach your food? Is there local producers that you tap into as well?
Yeah, well, actually, glad you brought up the wine, our wine region. But I'll just touch on that briefly. So we only run a Canberra local wine list, and that is something that we've done from the beginning. Now, I'm not sure if we were the only venue to do that from right from the beginning, but I know that we're one of a few, and that's just something we've always carried on. We are so fortunate in this region where we are to have the wine producers that we do. They produce some of the best wines, I feel. And where we're situated in Gundaroo, we're right in the middle of the triangle of the Canberra District wine region. Murrum Bateman, Lake George, and Bungendore are, at all sort of points of where we are. So we're right in the middle of that. So we've got great access to these guys, and we deal with them directly as farmers, because that's what the winemakers are. They're farmers, and we get a great insight into how their vintage is, and the struggles that they go through, or if they've got some new plantings or new offerings. In terms of our local producers, there's a guy that lives down the road from us, and he breeds full-blood Australian white sheep, and he'll contact me, every month or two or a couple of months and say, hey, I've got a couple of lambs going to slaughter, would you like some? So absolutely, we'll put them on the menu as a special. There's a lady also in the area, she grows or rears Bora goats, do the same thing. We'll get in a couple of whole carcasses, and it's great for the staff to see that and be exposed to those types of things as well, knowing how to break down whole carcass animals. So I think a lot of that technique is being lost through convenience of buying either portion controlled or, just primary cuts of meat. I really like using secondary cuts and offal. It's not for everybody, but I know if I went out and saw, a tongue, ox tongue or something on the menu, I'd be straight up for that. And thankfully, it's also rubbing off on my eldest daughter. She loves those types of things as well. So it's not just me sitting there eating it. I've roped my daughter in too.
Well, you and Tanya have made a real success running a regional restaurant. What sort of advice would you have for someone that might be taking that leap and starting their own sort of restaurant in a region?
If you're not from the community, make yourself part of the community. And, you can do that several ways by, charitable donations to the local school or sporting clubs, employing local kids. And then being true to yourself. You don't want to. You want to bring the community with you, because they're the ones that are going to support you when it's tough.
Well, you're doing amazing things out there in Gundaroo. What do you love about what you do?
I love the people I work with. That's probably the first thing. I enjoy the people that we work with. I enjoy the customers. You get on. Most of them you get on to a personal rapport with. We've got diners that come in every week, maybe a couple of times a week. Our producers, a lot of these producers, particularly the wine producers, we've been dealing directly with from the beginning. So you forge relationships with them. And then when it comes to cooking, it's the creative side of it. I really enjoy writing a menu. And like most, I guess, sickos in this hospitality, I love the buzz of service. I love when it's busy. It's like running a symphony, I feel. You've got the docket rail full of dockets, and because of how our venue is situated, I can't see the whole restaurant. We're made up of all these tiny rooms, but I can see the restaurant through the dockets and knowing which staff member is where, and just having that flow. That does really excite me.
That's a beautiful image. And Kurt, it's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear just a part of your story. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, Huck. It's been great. Cheers.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.